Hello, everybody. I won't try and say good evening, good morning, whatever, because the time zones in this are all over the world. So just to start the session, I want to introduce myself. I'm Russell Klein. I work for TransLution. I am South African, but I'm based in the US. And strange enough, I'm sitting in the UK today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're just waiting another couple of seconds for other people to join, but I think we're probably good. Um, Let me share my screen. Oh, people joining. Okay. Oh, that was not. I apologize for that. Okay. So the session today is really around how some of our customers have used TransLution in their businesses and what they've learned and how they've adapted their businesses to working with TransLution and with the technology that comes with it. Um, we're very grateful to have three people that volunteered to do this today. Justin Burton is from Butler's Cheese here in the UK. They've been running TransLution for about 2 years. Rob Abrahamson from Kilcoy in the US, just outside Chicago. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, but he did build a presentation and a video, so we're going to run that through. And then Wits Kutzer, who uh, works at Peregrine Livefoods just outside London. Um, We're going to run through the presentations, and then we would, if you want to ask questions, you can post them into the Q&A section of Teams. I did promise that I wasn't going to talk too extensively about what TransLution does and the sales side of it, but I just wanted to kind of run through very briefly kind of who we are, where we fit in for people that don't know. Technically, we are a SYSPRO system integration partner. We've been working in the SYSPRO space since 2004. We've got over 370 companies running TransLution with SYSPRO, and that makes up about 8,000 concurrent users across our client base. We are at heart a bunch of engineers and industrial people. We are not accountants. We are not SYSPRO consultants. We will very carefully talk about the industrial stuff that we deal with and that sort of thing, but we will never ever get involved in genuine SYSPRO consulting work. Just briefly on the product, it's a very configurable piece of software. So, and that's not really the objective of today, but we can configure workflows and logic to scan, capture data, do all sorts of things. Most of our clients run on Android, and it's really any type of Android device. We've got some that are literally explosion-proof, intrinsically safe scanners, through to cheap throwaway mobile phones, tablets, etc., etc. One of the key things in the software is that we do support the ability in anything that we do to do things like to take photographs, for example, and capture signatures, etc., as part of the process. We also have a Windows client front end, and the key difference there is that allows us to do things like integrate to scales, to IoT devices in factories, to machines, and all sorts of other external systems such as couriers, carriers, so UPS, FedEx, DHL, etc. So fundamentally, a very flexible piece of software designed to be used on the factory floor, on the warehouse floor by generally poorly educated workers. We have a client in Atlanta who says it takes him longer to teach his new employees where the washroom is, where the bathroom is, than to use TransLution. And that really is our objective when we put these systems together. very briefly, what we could consider standard functionality that we do often, it's all the sort of warehouse functionality that we do, and the clients that we've got talking today will tell you about non-standard stuff that we do, but this is the typical stuff that we cater for in any warehouse or manufacturing environment. But as I said, the key with us is that we do non-standard and strange physical flows, where quite often the sequence that you're capturing the data just doesn't quite make sense on the factory floor. And the nature of our software is that allows us to change it to make it easier for the people on the floor to use. One of the things that we also do is we capture a huge amount of data behind the scenes. Every time somebody scans a barcode, we log who scanned it, what they scanned, how long they took, etc., etc. And that allows us to generate a whole bunch of operational dashboards and data around people efficiency, machine efficiency, potentially warehouse efficiency, etc., etc. It's all sitting in the database and it's available to be used. So very briefly, that's kind of what the business is about. I'm going to hand over to Justin Burton from Butler's Farmhouse Cheeses, who is the finance director there, and he's been very heavily involved with the TransLution project from day zero. So Justin, thanks very much. Over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Russell. My name is Justin. I'm the finance director at Butler's Farmhouse Cheeses. We took TransLution and SYSPRO on in 2025. We went live September or October 2025. So it is a brand new system and ERP solution in our company. I'm going to talk a little bit around how we use it for our business as a window into SYSPRO, and it is now a central part of our daily operations. So if I can just go to the next slide. So a little bit around Butler's first. We are a fourth generation family business. We make and we sell cheese. We built a new production site in 24 and 25. Unfortunately, we had a fire that destroyed one of the sites in 2023. So it was a very quick and ambitious year that we built a brand new site, and we took that opportunity to build it back exactly how we wanted it. And that meant putting in new systems as well, not just physical buildings and machines. We're very lucky to have His Majesty the King open the site earlier this year. And we're up and running, using TransLution, using SYSPRO, and operating back at full capacity. So, we make cheese. It's obviously a food product. It needs to be traced. And the kind of nuance with cheese is that it's a living product, very much like a wine or a whiskey, or I suppose some forms of meat. Over time, the cheese changes. It's truly a living product. So we can't make it on day one and expect it to be the same on day 30, 60, 90. It also has a use by date, a best before date, a minimum to depot date. So there's quite a few variables at play with cheese compared to some other kind of standard products. SYSPRO is obviously a very large company which can adapt to a lot of markets. But I found that TransLution is a piece of software that can really kind of fit with our niche needs. So we use TransLution as a kind of window into SYSPRO to capture the traceability, the physical movements on the site, and all that goes into SYSPRO, which is then the kind of brain and the central storage area, which kind of helps us run the rest of the business. So it really was an implementation end-to-end. EDI orders in from the retailers that we sell to, all the way through to cheese make, cheese cutting and packing, dispatch, and EDI invoicing out, and everything in between. So the goal at the bottom of this slide is sums it up quite well. We want TransLution, or we use TransLution to make the system reflect reality without asking the operators to become ERP specialists. I think Russell alluded to that in his kind of opening statement of wanting TransLution to be easy to use so that anybody can pick up a scanner or go to a screen and just read what it says to be able to achieve what they need to achieve in their day. I've kind of touched on this already, so it is end-to-end, SYSPRO and TransLution hand in hand. I can't think of too many areas of the business that it doesn't touch, but again, the key people that TransLution kind of works for is the operator, and if we can make the operator's job easy, intuitive, then it means we get the information, management and owners and directors need to be able to run the business in the kind of most efficient and effective way. I've covered this already as well. The shop floor activity, again, TransLution's a window. So from shop floor to SYSPRO, in between we've got TransLution on the scanners, on the screens to capture, validate, and integrate with SYSPRO. Without a TransLution, operators would need to probably work around the system. Some operators, I think I'm very lucky to work at a company where the operators that work with me and with us are generally very good, and the best ones seem to find ways around the system for the right reasons and with good intentions. But as I think probably all of us know on this call, you don't want that to happen. Even if it's a good intention, you want them to follow the path that is laid before them. And again, TransLution, if you can design it well, and I'll come on to a slide later on which kind of shows a little example of that process. It can make it easy for the guys to do their job, and everybody benefits. So I think I'm going to go on to a few examples now of what's kind of unique for Butlers and how we use it. So one is receiving stock. So the start of this is pretty generic, and every company needs to raise POs and document what comes in. But I think the reason I use this example is that prior to using TransLution, raising POs, goods receiving against a PO, quality checks, it was quite difficult in our previous system. It didn't kind of hang together that great, whereas we started from the ground up with the guys at SYSPRO and TransLution when we were speccing out the system and the different apps that we wanted to build, and we rebuilt this process first, and then TransLution followed the process to create the app, which makes it really easy for us to book items in, because again we're a food manufacturer. There's a lot of goods that need to be lot traceable. So I know one of our unique points is that we track each cheese by a lot. So that we have hundreds of thousands of lots at any one time, and the same for some types of packaging as well. The food contact packaging, we need to be able to trace and mass balance all the way through. We have a lot of audits during the year from customers and kind of legislative bodies. So it's this kind of first bit into the system when a good or a stock item arrives on site needs to be correct, because everything else downstream from that will fail without it. So the guys will raise a PO on SYSPRO, and the scanners will show what POs are due in that day, and they'll work through the menu in the scanner to basically a list of questions that says, okay, which order is it, which stock item are you booking in, how many are you booking in. It will then ask the quality questions that are set, and within a few minutes of the goods arriving on site, the TransLution app has recorded all the information. It's taken a photo of, or whatever you want to take a photo of, really. I think we take a photo of the delivery note, and if we want to take a photo of the goods to report a quality issue or anything like that we've got the option to do that as well. So within a few minutes of arriving on site, it's booked into stock, the quality checks are passed, it's a lot available on SYSPRO, and it's been put away. So there's a real low overhead to doing it this way compared to the way I've done it in the past. It's really mobile, it's really easy just to do at the point of kind of inception rather than having to go somewhere else to access a system. And so that's probably more of a generic example that a lot of people will have to do. I think the next one is a little bit different and a little bit unique to cheese. So, as I said before, cheese is a living product and grading cheese is a very, very important job. So we have 2 cheese graders. I think everybody who I speak to, when they find out I work for a company that makes cheese, they think I stand around eating cheese all day, which I do a little bit of, but the cheese graders really do that all day. And these guys are specialists in their field, and we need to make sure that their kind of knowledge and expertise that's in the head gets into a central system that the rest of us can actually do something with. Because the cheese is changing quality, it's changing maturity, we have to make decisions on what temperature to hold it at different points in its life. It really is hundreds of variables that can change how a cheese matures, and we collect so much data on that side of things because cheese quality is the number one kind of important thing to us, and TransLution helps us monitor that by having a set of questions and a process which allows us to capture the variables that we want to capture. So number one will be a grade, so we give it a number that represents its quality. It allows us to put cheese on hold or release it from hold based on the information we put into the grading application, so that then if it is on hold it can't be used in production, and there's different workflows that can be triggered off that kind of stream. It allows us to track the maturity of the cheese and produce a grading timetable. So we've got hundreds of thousands of lots. We need to have a timetable that shows us what needs grading and when, and when it'll be ready for use in cutting and packing and finally selling to the customer. So the grading app again is a very early on in the kind of workflow of the whole cheese's life, and really important that we can capture that information. And again, combination of TransLution and SYSPRO really allows us to get that process, which is really niche to a cheesemaker, in and work and repeatable and robust really, really quickly. Because we don't just need to know where the stock is, we need to know what quality it is, how old it is, when is it going to be its premium for eating or cutting, and this little app is the start of that and allows us to achieve what we set out to. Another kind of one in kind of the production areas, and again it could be quite unique to us, is that we need to weigh each case of finished goods that we produce. So really, really quickly, let's keep an eye on the time. We take a large cheese, call it 20 kilos. We make that, we take in milk in the dairy, a 20 kilo block or round will pop out of the dairy. We will then cut and pack that into the wedges or the blocks you're probably all familiar with that you buy in the shops. And at that point in time, we need to put an outer case on it and weigh it to make sure it is the correct weight for that customer. So TransLution have a product called Easy Weigh, which we run on touchscreens connected to scales. So every single case that we produce goes onto a scale. Easy Weigh creates the lot, so we'll select the production job which has been planned in SYSPRO, and each time we put a case of cheese on the scale, it will create a lot in SYSPRO, and it will use SYSPRO to configure the use by date based on the different rules we've set, and it'll weigh it and it'll stamp that as a lot into SYSPRO, and then allows us to transfer it off further down the line for dispatch and invoicing. So when we signed up with SYSPRO, I think I'm right in saying that at the time TransLution were the only guys that could do this weighing and labelling integration for us. They worked really well with one of my guys, Costel, so I've got a brilliant I've got a brilliant team over here. We've kind of implemented this project very, very quickly as we built the new site. And one of the things that kind of I want to run through, or the theme to run through this whole presentation, is the way that the guys at TransLution have really, really worked well with the guys back at base at Butler's, with me included, but more so the rest of the systems team that really, really do work hand in glove with TransLution, especially in implementation. You know, you're working together every day, so frictionless, and then post implementation, the support is, I would say, the best support that we've had from any partner ever in my kind of 15 years of experience. So it's meeting the niche of your business and fitting around those little kind of bumps and nooks and crannies that each business has got. You know, TransLution kind of fills that gap really well. Let's see what the next example is. So picking and dispatch. I think, again, this is a very, very generic example that everybody does, but everybody wants to do it in a slightly different way. I think on the next slide, yeah, so on the next slide, we completely overhauled the picking and dispatch process. And just on the right is kind of the process that we designed with one of the guys at SYSPRO, so our warehouse manager, myself, and one of the SYSPRO consultants mapped out the new process for dispatch to create the different bits of paperwork that different customers need, the different ASNs and different requirements that each customer requires to kind of fit in with their system. TransLution managed to achieve all of that. Complicated kind of, if it's this customer, do this, if it's that customer, do the other. So the real complexity of rules, TransLution just rattled through and produced something that worked straight out of the box on go live. But I think it's really important. The point I've put the little process map on this slide is, if there's a few apps where we didn't do this, and it's much harder to kind of pick those up and run with them. You know, for the complicated apps where you can do a flow chart and get the process really clear, it makes it so much easier in the long run, even though it can feel like a bit of a drag at the time. I mean, in our implementation, we were planning and designing and implementing about 25 different applications, so we were really a big bang go live because of the new site. So there's a lot of these diagrams drawn, but they're standing the test of time. A year later, we still use them, and they work really well. That's a little bit more on dispatch and just the different menus that TransLution can show. I think I'm due to wrap up. So, kind of lessons for users from my point of view. Kind of recapping what I've said. Yeah, TransLution bridges the shop floor and SYSPRO. We couldn't use SYSPRO as effectively without TransLution as the window. They'd be much more difficult to do. Again, the operators can learn TransLution very, very quickly. It's down to the skill of how you design the apps with TransLution. It's very, very easy to pick up a scanner and just follow the prompts to achieve what that particular app needs to achieve. Yeah, bad master data will surface quickly. You don't need me to tell you that. Good point on validation, that there's so much validation you can put in, but it's a real balance between how much you put in and the speed of what happens on the shop floor. I know I had a few discussions with people in the warehouse of, I wanted an extra bit of validation, but it meant that they would take an extra 2 seconds to scan. So it means that over a day it might add up to 2 hours and things like that. But the beauty is that it is a sliding scale. You can do it, review it, and change it very quickly with the guys at TransLution. It's not you put it in and then you've got to wait 2 months until someone can get to it. The speed and the dynamism is really there. Yeah, custom development needs ownership and control. I mean, we are quite a aggressive and fast moving company, but there does have to be an element of that ownership and control. Otherwise, you can kind of disappear into the abyss. I mean, we haven't done that. We've done quite well, but there has been times where we've kind of developed an app and popped it live maybe a day or two sooner than it could have been. But that's the way we kind of work and the way we learn and adapt. So design the processes first, as I've already said. Keep SYSPRO as a single source of truth. And then, I think that brings me to the end. I'm going to pass back to Russell. Thank you for listening. I look forward to the rest of the presentation.
Great, Justin. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try and share my video now that Rob at Korkoi produced. What screen am I on? Hello, everybody. Renee tells me that it's frozen, so I just wanted to just confirm if it was working or not. I apologize.
We're not seeing anything, Russell.
Okay. I tell you what I'm going to do. I think there's something strange going on with my network. Wits, I'm going to jump straight past this video. I apologize and ask you if you can maybe start your presentation.
Yep.
Would that be okay? Thank you very much. So Wits is from Peregrine. Just my humor on that was the first time I ever went to Peregrine. I walked in and they were talking about a warehouse system project, and somebody dug into a deep freeze and hauled something out and threw it on the table and said, "Can you scan and track this?" And I kind of looked at it and went, "What is it?" And it was a dead frozen rabbit. I kind of went, okay, I'm in a different world here. And that's the world that Wits is in. So Wits, all yours. Thank you very much.
One of many products that we stock and sell. Right, let me share.
You're sharing your camera, but not your screen, I think, from what I can see.
It says it's coming up. It's still working on it. Yours freeze as well, Russell.
Did seem to. I thought it was my internet, but maybe it's not my internet. Maybe it's Teams.
There we go. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Lovely. Right. Hello, everybody. My name is Wits Kutzer. I am in charge of everything ERP, all things ERP at Peregrine Livefoods. I have been working with the Peregrine team for just about 5 years now. Been involved in the entire journey, kind of from start to finish, all the developments, everything kind of ERP related, to get them where they are now. In terms of who we are, The Peregrine is a European leader specializing in the wholesale of all your reptile, amphibian, and invertebrate needs, effectively. We manage thousands of products across multiple brands, both internal and external, and we breed on sites well over 1 million insects every year. As you can probably tell, Peregrine's quite a high volume business, and I think that's where TransLution came in. In terms of what we actually supply, if you were to home an exotic animal, something that's kind of a bit more out of the ordinary, Peregrine can supply everything that you need to take care of it effectively. Anything from the actual enclosure it lives in, any type of heating, hydration, and lighting solutions, habitat items like substrates and preformed rocks, all the way down to the actual food that your animal will eat, whether it be live food, frozen food like what Russell experienced, or prepackaged foods. Our aim is obviously to source, breed, and produce whatever your requirement is, distribute it in the shortest possible window. In terms of our environment, we currently have a on-site temperature and humidity controlled breeding warehouse. We have 2 production facilities that operate 7 days a week. We have 6 physical stocking warehouses with well over 5,000 bin locations across all of them. We have an ever-growing number of 45 active TransLution users across those sites, and they use anywhere north of 20 bespoke TransLution applications to facilitate kind of warehouse daily tasks. We ingest and fulfill north of 1,200 orders daily, creating well over 2,200 dispatches every day. This results in, on average, more than about 11,000 lines dispatched every single day. And looking at some of the data that TransLution's captured, we estimate that we post in excess of 100,000 inventory transactions each day. So definitely quite high volume. In terms of our journey so far, before TransLution, Peregrine was a very manual, paper-based operation, kind of very little in the way of visibility. Because transactions weren't posting in real time, stock and fulfillment accuracy was very hard to gauge, resulting in investigations of certain issues being quite tricky. Knowledge of the entire operation was held with a handful of people within the business, meaning there was quite high reliance on those people. We wanted to kind of do away with that and turn to a SYSPRO and TransLution combination to kind of rectify that, I suppose, or make it better at least. And after TransLution, we did away with paper entirely in kind of operationally, and that has the added benefit of appeasing the corporate responsibility gods as well. With TransLution being so tightly integrated with SYSPRO, transactions posting in real time resulted in fulfillment and stock accuracy being an all-time high, and it continues to do so to this day. And because of all the data that we capture through TransLution and what it natively captures itself, we were able to surface quite powerful metrics that the business didn't have before, things like picking statistics, which we use daily. One of the kind of best parts about TransLution is just the flexibility we have and the freedom that we get in terms of how the apps perform and how they behave. We tailor each app on how they interact with the operator and the system to the point where we deem it kind of the most efficient. And we enforce a more scanner-driven process rather than relying on the operator themselves. In terms of what we've been able to achieve with TransLution, in keeping with the theme of a scanner-driven process, there are kind of some areas where we've kind of TransLution's had quite an impact. In the receiving of goods, we validate as much as humanly possible to minimize the risk of operator errors, because that was one of our kind of major sources of backache before. And following on that, we also determined the best locations for the stock that we received and then direct that operator to that location for the put away processes. From a dispatch perspective, we worked with the TransLution team for quite some time and quite closely to develop a picking and packing app that we've dubbed Smart Pick. The app itself is quite intricate and quite complex. It took quite a while to get it to where it is now. It's by no means perfect, but it is an enormous beast. It covers everything from the automatic allocation of orders to operators based on a predetermined prioritization calculation. Try saying that a few times quickly. Moving on to a directed pick sequence based on a bin location matrix that we created. We obviously, again, validate as much as humanly possible to deter any kind of mistakes throughout the picking and packing process. And then we snuck in some kind of package depletion process as well as a courier, integration to kind of round things off a little. With regards to inventory, we developed an app, a stock taking app that we've called the Randomizer. This app will perpetually hand out random stock and bin combinations for an operator to count, which is then overseen by a custom app in the SYSPRO front end, as well as an automated replenishment app that tells the operator which pick faces to replenish based on the current supply and demand in the system and current stock levels. We've had obviously ups and downs with TransLution. There's some interesting ones here. We have successfully created an abandoned pick recovery process, which will recover a pick that hasn't been processed for a certain amount of time and hand it off to a new operator as a new pick. From a housekeeping perspective, our stock moves around the business a lot, all day, every day. So at the end of the day, we move all stock back to its respective default location, ready for the next day. And then we have a slew of other kind of background warehouse processes that run automatically in the background. Some areas where we fell a bit short, or let's say where I fell a bit short potentially, was I was a little ambitious in creating an invoice posting app using the desktop client of EasyTouch for our finance team. The app itself worked just fine. It did exactly what we needed to do, but there was little in the way of of adoption. This was kind of one of those because I can developments rather than a necessity. We also consolidate dispatch notes daily because of just the sheer number that we produce. So initially when we went live, we created an app that consolidated dispatch notes based on a variable that we passed in. And this was simply just phased out for a more automated approach. In terms of what we're working on next, using kind of the existing architecture that TransLution runs on alongside things like PHP and some of the other languages, we're creating a picking assistant overlay that it'll run on the devices and it'll surface key metrics for the pickers in real time about what they're picking. And we're also developing a pallet builder application that will direct the receiving operator to build an nth number of pallets based on not only what they're receiving, but also the current stock levels within the warehouse. And in terms of results, we've been live on TransLution itself for just about a year now. So we still consider ourselves quite new to this. We haven't quite been able to kind of quantify the return that we're getting, but we have obviously seen improvements. We've noticed improvements across some key areas. First and foremost is obviously the operational freedom that we get with TransLution, being able to kind of develop how we want and what we want. Having that control over how the apps and environments behave is great. And obviously we can massage everything into exactly the shape that we need it to be. And as a result of all the validations that we've put in place, we've seen a reduction in fulfillment errors across the board, with a massive increase in stock accuracy, which is obviously always a good thing. All of this results in better visibility due to the kind of real-time nature of the system and how things post, which gives us the ability to more accurately resource across the business. And lastly, in terms of what we learned along the way, some of the areas kind of worked well, some things we do a bit differently. And starting with a standardized process and then tailoring it to our needs from there was always a great way to start. And the TransLution team that we worked with always encouraged that from the get-go, which was really good. And at every development milestone that we hit, we quickly got our warehouse teams involved to test what we had developed and then iterate based on their feedback. If we were to do this again, something we'd do differently next time is, during the development phase, during the early phases, little attention was paid to the actual infrastructure that TransLution and the rest of the environment would run on, which would later then, when we went live, come around to bite us. We definitely pay a bit more attention to that. We were also very quick to automate existing processes that we had in place without challenging whether they were still fit for purpose. And ultimately, some of these had to either be rewritten entirely or just scrapped outright. And something I would most definitely spend a lot more time on is master data, making sure not only it's there, but it is correct, as this was, again, a major source of headache for quite a long time. And in terms of, some advice for existing TransLution users or people that are new to TransLution, don't just see it or treat it as a scanning application. It does a lot more than that, first and foremost. But what we found is that we surfaced and used and visualized, at least, the data that TransLution natively captures. And we use that to not only improve the apps themselves, but also existing processes that we had in place across the business. That, I think, for me was one of the kind of unintended good points, I guess, from implementing TransLution. And we've seen massive gains just as a fallout consequence of the data that we've been able to surface. Yeah, that about rounds me off.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We try and go back to my presentation again briefly. After my sharing debacle, I'm a bit grumpy, so okay, hopefully that worked this time. Okay, so I really want to say thank you very much to Vitz and Justin, specifically. With Rob's video, we will post, we'll put it on our website, and we will post a link to everybody that may be interested in it. But does anybody have any questions? I think the question and answer thing was opened in Teams. Renee, you were keeping an eye on the question and answers?
Yes, so I have a couple of questions that came through. Should I start with Justin in the order of the speakers? Justin, you talked about mass balance, and you talked about weighing your blocks of cheese. There were questions about whether you weigh on the input side as well.
Yeah, kind of. So because we cut and pack our own cheese, we put milk into the dairy and we produce cheese out of the dairy. And at that first point, we do weigh the cheese. Again, we weigh it with TransLution Easy Weigh. So that cheese will get a weight and a lot number, and then that'll go through to cutting and packing once it's old enough and of the required quality. So that'll get scanned into the cutting and packing room. So that'll take, if it's 20 kilos, it'll take 20 kilos into the cutting and packing room, and it'll get weighed on the way out of the cutting and packing room. So say we get 19 kilos out of that cheese, it'll get 19 kilos of good product and maybe 1 kilo of offcuts or trim.
Hold on. Thank you very much. I see another question has come through. Yes, saying, would you call this more of a warehouse management system or a manufacturing resource tracker?
I'll have a go answering that one first, and anyone can jump in over the top. I wouldn't see it as a warehouse management system. I think it's more than that. You can kind of integrate it into any process that you're currently running. Yeah, I would say it's more than just that.
Thanks. Thanks, Rob. Justin, sorry. Wits, I had two questions come out for you. When you talked about infrastructure, what were you specifically talking about? Network servers, that kind of infrastructure?
So a bit of both, really. Network was definitely a key area where we didn't pay enough attention, and not just in terms of access points, but because of the amount of data that is being pushed around at any one time. Some of the kind of switching hardware that we had in place was just not up to scratch, and we saw just dropouts and just odd behaviors that were really hard to diagnose initially. Because obviously, first point of call, everyone blames the app itself. We look at the app, we try and change some things, nothing changes. By chance, we looked at some of the hardware, we upgraded some of the hardware, and Bob's your uncle, the problem went away. But obviously that was a lesson that we learned after we had been bitten. And because the nature of our business, because we're such a high volume, high dispatching business, and we basically have a kind of next day delivery policy, ultimately the customer was hurt by those mistakes because we were late to deliver.
Okay, yeah. I've been asked, relating to the previous question to Justin, would you see TransLution as a warehouse management system?
No, not at all, actually. I mean, I suppose I've been fortunate and or unfortunate enough, depending on which way you look at it, to train quite a few people on the TransLution platform or specific apps in general. And I kind of I basically tell them TransLution can do whatever you want at the end of the day. If you've got the knowledge of how it works and you've got a bit of kind of logic behind you, TransLution can quite literally do whatever you need it to do. As far as in a business setting, it definitely is more than a warehouse management tool. Like I said in my closing remark, it's not just a scanning app. It does a lot more than just scan some products and store some variables and post some stuff to SYSPRO. It's I mean, even at Peregrine, we have some fairly complex solutions, but I think we probably barely scratched the surface of what TransLution actually could do. It doesn't even need to be anything warehouse related. It can be completely outside of the warehouse. So no, it's not just a warehouse management solution. To me, it's a development platform to do lots of stuff. Is my simple answer.
Thanks. So I've got a question specifically for you. Question for Wits. What was your implementation timeline from go live to stable? And secondly, how do you ensure integrity of data between TransLution and SYSPRO?
So the question of a development timeline is a bit of an interesting one, and I suppose Renee and Russell, you probably laugh at this one as well. Yeah, our development timeline was, I think, about 5 years end to end. And not because
maybe
of
we
TransLution.
Should say at this point it doesn't have to be that long.
No, not at all. And this wasn't as a result of TransLution or the platform or any of the apps that we developed, or maybe some of the apps we developed, but we also had a big bang implementation, like Justin mentioned, where we went live with SYSPRO, TransLution, MOM, and a whole bunch of kind of third-party applications all in one day, which is probably a bit of a mistake looking back, but nevertheless. We were ambitious. We were incredibly ambitious in what we were trying to do, hence why it took so long. To date, well, I wouldn't say to date, but over the last few kind of years, we've had, I want to say, 6 go lives, with obviously 5 of them not going so well. We eventually got it over the line, I believe it was September last year, somewhere around there. And we've been fairly stable ever since. Now, like I said, we're still new to this. We still continue to develop every single day. We change things every day. We alter whatever it is every day. We improve every day. So we're by no means done. So that will probably grow out. And in terms of the question of data integrity between the two, we try keep, in a weird way, we kind of try keep the data disparate. And what I mean by that is that SYSPRO, like Justin mentioned, SYSPRO is still the main kind of brain. It is still the single source of truth. The data that we hold in TransLution is ancillary and is transactional, if you will. It facilitates a posting of sorts back to SYSPRO. So in terms of integrity, SYSPRO is where the data lives. We don't necessarily have one set of data that's different in one system or the other.
Okay, thanks. Quick question for you, Justin, and then a question for both of you. Wits talked about quite a long timeline, I think, and Wits, you said it was not necessarily technical issues that caused that timeline, which in fact does relate to another question I've got here, is pushback from users regarding to changes to existing processes. And I think either one of you could maybe pick up on that. Do you think that was one of your causes of the long timeline, Wits?
Pushback, I don't think so, because we were moving from quite an archaic system to a relatively, again, ambitious system. So there was a lot of excitement. So definitely not pushback from a case or from a perspective of not wanting to change. We were lucky enough that all of our operators that we got involved in the kind of development and testing phase, they were eager to test. They were eager to get onto something new and eager to move to something better. In terms of our, we got everyone involved from the get-go, which I think stirred that excitement. It was hard to maintain it over such a long time. But again, I think we got kind of lucky with the level of engagement that our warehouses wanted to have with our systems. But in terms of pushing out changes, we would never kind of take that ivory tower approach where it was just, this is a change, you will do it this way now. It was always a case of, we're wanting to change something, what do you guys think? We kind of go back and forth in terms of the solution so that they knew, number one, what was coming, and they were also happy with what was coming.
Justin, I think that your implementation was probably a lot quicker than Witz's. And what do you think were the differences, the reason that was? Did it relate to your users, or was it more about some external factors?
Ultimately, I think it does come down to people and resource. So if we start right at the top, I'm in a fortunate position where we had a really ambitious goal and it was set at the board level, and the board was pushing for the timelines. And with that obviously comes the faster you need to go, the more you need to do. You need to resource it, you need to invest in it. You can't kind of try and cut the corners. I was involved in a number of conversations of, how can I say, I don't think I'm going to hit this particular deadline, and the kind of board feedback was, well, hit your deadline, that doesn't move, what do you need to change? So at board level and ownership level, you've got to buy in and kind of be joined up. But then secondly, it just comes down to what Wits was saying, the super users and getting the staff involved. I mean, very broadly, I think there's thirds in the staff. There's the top 30% that want to push on and kind of real lead change. There's the middle 30% who will kind of follow the top 30% and the bottom 30% who kind of just don't want to change and just want to do what they've always done. So if you can identify those top 30% and create, we call them super users internally, but champions that can go and roll out and be involved in development and planning and implementation, they're the guys that really make the difference, along with the development team and the IT guys.
Thanks. Another question, and I guess that both of you could answer this. You can alternate. If you had to go back in time, what would you do differently and why? And specifically as regards to the implementation, and how well did the UAT work? That's one long question.
I'll go first on that one, if you don't mind, Justin. let's say if I had to go back, knowing what I know now, at least, if I had to go back and change one thing, let's say, it's somewhat what I spoke about within my presentation of using a standardized process. 5 years ago, obviously things were a bit different to what they are now. And we were maybe a bit too eager, or too ambitious, maybe is the right word, with some of the apps that we wanted to develop, the way that we wanted the system to behave, the level of control that we wanted, the automation that we wanted it all from day one. We wanted it to be a certain way. And also we wanted multiple ERP platforms to be live all at the same time on the same day. So that's definitely something I would change going forward. And it's definitely a lesson I've learned in terms of incrementing the system and starting a bit smaller is sometimes a better outcome. If we had done that 5 years ago, let's say just gone live on SYSPRO and moved on from there, and then done TransLution, then done MOM, then done this, then done that, I definitely think it wouldn't have taken 5 years. And then in terms of UAT, we did loads. I mean, we did just endless rounds of UAT, and we had to because of the nature of the system that we were trying to implement. There were so many dominoes that had to fall into the right place that we had to test it constantly. So like Justin mentioned, in terms of identifying that top 30%, those super users that you have, they will be your best friend in terms of implementation like this. The champions that you have on site, you need to use them every day if possible, or at least, I mean, we dedicated at Peregrine, at least, we dedicated to, I think it was an hour and a half every day for kind of certain periods of the year. So you do your day job, and an hour and a half of your job was to test something. And that really helped us in identifying loads of problems. But again, it's different business to business, but just identify your champions and use them.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to call it there, everybody. We're almost out of time. There's one more question. No, I think, okay. So what I would like to suggest is if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Renee from our team at any time. We'll send out after this, we'll send out a bit of an email to you all just with our details and contact details, etc., etc. And yeah, thank you very much to Wits and to Justin specifically for presenting, and I hope this has been useful. If people would like to see something like this about other industries that we're involved in, we would be happy to do that. Our objective is honestly to get customers to talk to each other. That's what the game is about. This is not about us selling specifically. This is about customers telling you what they've learned and what the pain points were and how they've overcome them. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I really appreciate everything that you've done for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.